small fleck, small nut, to a size to a tennis ball, to a size of this whole multi-story building. It can range anywhere between that. But today I'm going to talk about the classification of three types of these particles. These particles would be either 1 centimeter or less in size, ranging between 1 centimeter to 10 centimeter, or it would be greater than 10 centimeter. Right, so this is basically George Clooney becoming space debris himself. Right, so wouldn't count it as a promotion from an astronaut to space debris, but anyways, moving on to the next slide. If dinosaurs would have been attending this lecture, they would be laughing at us because we are pairing space debris here, but they actually waited for an asteroid. They actually got wiped out by an asteroid. So they would be saying like, I mean, you guys are like pairing what space debris would do to you, but we actually got wiped out by a whole asteroid. So that's funny that we're talking about it, but that's the difference. We have that level of consciousness which prevails over the level of awareness, so that we could be prepared about the solutions of the future, right? That's the difference between us and the dinosaurs, and that's why we are here and they are not. So before I tell you how big this problem is, and by the end of this talk you go around your home searching in the internet what space debris is and how big the problem is, and you go enlightened here to your hostels or to your classrooms or wherever you want to go and search about it, I'll give you a small simulation about how big this threat is. Rather than me explaining this to you, I thought a video would be better. So here is the presentation. So just watch it. You'll understand how big the threat is. So you must have noticed something, right? In 1957, we launched a first satellite, which was Sputnik. That was the first satellite. After that, the space technology became more and more accessible to the common mass. The costs decreased. The technologies became viable. So now the startups and individual innovators launched their own satellites. South India has launched Kalamsat itself. So each and every individual from engineering colleges now we're launching satellites. So over the period of this 60 years, right, from 1957 to 2017 and adding 2 years right now to 62 years to 2019, the growth in the space satellite industry increased exponentially. So now in 2019, it's estimated that we launch anything between 2,100 to 3,000 satellites every year all across the globe. So what do you think it does? On the other hand, it has pros. The satellite technology has become cheaper. It has become accessible to all. It serves us benefit. But what to do after these satellites become defunct? We have no plans for that. So once the satellites become defunct, they're just orbiting the space, or the orbits, the lower orbits mostly. They're just orbiting that space. There are many other satellites which are floating there, and they might hit them, collide with them, and cause a damage, which might be irreparable. That could hurt the chances of a future. We plan missions to Mars, we plan missions to Sun, but just imagine a satellite moving towards the Sun and getting hit by one of these particles. It's a multi-billion-dollar mission developed over years, and if it's hit by a chunk floating around a space, traveling 10 times than that of a speeding bullet, what do you expect to happen? The whole mission is kaput at the same point of time. That's why it's a big threat. The international markets, especially in Japan, in Europe, and America, are paying close attention to this issue. But unfortunately, in India, there's not much awareness, and there's why I come in. So that's my job, is to make you introduced to this issue, this problem which you have never heard before. You all guys are interested in making satellites. What I say is, like, once they get over, once they do their job, they're done with, we need to manage it, right? We need to do something about it. So, moving on. So, what I call is, this is this to be an apocalypse. There are multiple orbits, right? There is low Earth orbit, there's middle Earth orbit, there's high Earth orbit, geosynchronous orbit, geostationary orbit, sun synchronous orbits. The list goes on and on, right? So today I'm going to just talk about the very low Earth orbit. The very low Earth orbit is between 850 kilometers to 1000 kilometers, right? The low Earth orbit is up to 2000 kilometers. The very low Earth orbit is between 850 to 1000 kilometers. So just in the very low Earth orbit itself, I'm not counting any other orbit, I'm just talking about the very low Earth orbit itself. There are over 22,000 pieces of space debris, or the debris that is floating around, which are greater than 10 centimeter in size. Greater than 10 centimeter can mean greater than the size of your scale, an average Natraj scale, to the size of a building, this whole building. It includes everything, right? Then there are particles, we have 700,000 particles between 1 to 10 centimeter in size, and there are over 100 million particles which are less than 1 centimeter. And this is just in the very low Earth orbit. And I have not talked about the 7 different orbits that exist currently. So this issue is actually cascading at a level that we can't even fathom, because these things multiply. Right? They hit with each other, 2 particles hit with each other, make into 4. 4 hit with each other, make 8, 16, 32, 64. This has a name to it, which is called Kessler syndrome. And over the period of time, in a year, 1 million particles multiply into 6 to 7 million. This problem is already out of hand, and we have no solutions currently in existence to deal with this issue. So that's the major problem. So the speed of this particle is again a big issue. You might talk to me like, Siddharth, these particles have a size of 1 centimeter, 10 centimeter. I mean, how does it matter? I mean, it's really too small to do anything. But again, if it's traveling like 10 to 20 times the speed of a fast-moving bullet, it has an impact. Like, if I throw a stone at 20 times the speed of bullet at your head, I don't think you would be sitting in this lecture next day, right? Or attending any more of your classes. Just think about the satellites with expensive and sensitive equipment such as solar and optic arrays. If these particles travel in such a high speed collide with any one of them, the whole satellite is covered. It's basically useless. There is no power system. They would have a power backup for the next 2 to 3 days, and after that the satellite is gone. It becomes the debris itself, which would break into millions of pieces itself. So the problem only increases. Right. So I drew a conclusion. So for making you people understand, I could have used terms of forces and all that stuff. But an impact of a 10 centimeter debris, 10 centimeter, let us consider a soft tennis ball, right? So a soft tennis ball traveling 20 times the speed of the bullet, the impact on the satellite is that of 10 dynamite sticks exploding together at the same instant. That's 10 dynamite sticks lined together exploding at the same instant. So the impact is huge. And satellites, being sensitive equipment or spacecraft satellites, considering some of the satellites have nuclear propulsion in them, have nuclear coolants. So once they explode, this nuclear coolant is spread everywhere, floating in the space. That would be hazardous to the future space mission itself, because these are radioactive materials, right? So let's not even talk about very big debris. Let's talk about the debris which are very small, like size of a nut, size of a paint flake, right? These debris are traveling at a very high speed, like near about 12,600 miles per hour. Right? These debris constantly hit the International Space Station, the solar arrays which are there, the optic systems which are there, the visor, the glasses which are there, and they cause regular damage to them. And because of that, could you expect how much loss does it cost? NASA in 2007 to 2011 estimate NASA expected a loss of 1.4 billion US dollars just because these floating space debris hit the active satellites or active space stations that exist already there. So that's the loss just because of the debris which are hitting them. So it's a huge thing. And the most important thing about this is nobody has a monopoly over it. The space debris issue is open to solve by anyone. It's an open source problem. Right. Most of the space systems of the space technologies, usually space agencies like JAXA, ESA, ISRO, they have a monopoly over it, right? Because they have that sort of technology, they have that sort of expertise. This is open for all. Lockheed Martin even has challenges for students like you and me to participate and solve this issue. So it's open for all. It's open for you to participate and do something about it. So what's the result of this thing next? It's catastrophe, right? Let me explain this through with a video. So this is a 2.8 millimeter aluminium sphere. I'm not talking about like even 1 centimeter. I was talking about 1 centimeter, 10 centimeters. I'm talking about millimeters here. This is a 2.8 millimeter aluminium sphere traveling at around 7 to 8 kilometers per second. And it hits a solar array, which is made of aluminum and silicon. And see the damage. And there are 100 million of these pieces traveling only in the very lowest orbit. Right? And there are 8 different orbits I'm talking about. So those 100 million pieces are the ones who have been accounted for. There are millions of pieces out there we don't even know of. That's the level of damage which a 2.8 millimeter particle can do. Just imagine what a 10 centimeter particle can do to in the National Space Station. It would crash it. Right? So what is at stake here? You might ask like, okay, it's a big issue. I mean, but why should I care about it? Like, I have my semester exams and assignments to submit. Right? I need my grades to pass. What is at stake for me here? So I outlined 3 different points. Might get your attention. Right? I hope it gets your attention. The loss basically is at 3 fronts. Right? The first front, it is at economical. As I told you before, in a 2007 to 2011 study by NASA, it's online. The paper is open source. If you want, I can give it to you. Right? The estimated loss is 1.4 billion US dollars, just because of the damage caused by these floating pieces of junk in space. So it's a huge issue. All across Europe, in America, in Asia, Japan is especially considered with this problem. They're actually developing systems. There are private startups such as Astroscale dealing with this issue. And it's an open source problem. So apart from like having technologies that are built by only space agencies, this is the issue you can solve. Right? So that's the important point. That's why I'm standing here and giving you a talk about this, because this is something you can do about something. Right? And especially sitting at Indian Institute of Space Technology, you have the platform to do something about it. Right? The second thing is scientific. If a particle any size, like ranging from 1 centimeter to 10 centimeter to a large multi-story building to the size of a small nut, hits a satellite, what do you think its impact would be scientifically? It needs to be replaced. That solar array or the optic array, the visor, the glass, the power plant, whatever it is, there are cylinders made up of aluminum in the power plant system of a satellite. Small puncture could leak the entire propellant out. The satellite is deformed at that point. So you have to replace that thing, right? You have to replace that subsystem. You have to replace that with something else. So you have to send an entire mission to go there and fix this satellite on its own. How much is it going to cost? And how many times we are going to send missions just to repair our satellites which we have already launched in the orbit? We have to just send missions here to just repair the satellites which are already there. So apart from the fact that we are dreaming of going to Mars and beyond, if we are still stuck with repairing our own existing satellites, it's a huge setback for our ambitious missions in the future, right? And the third one, which I personally feel is the most important, is the social impact. Now, hear me out, guys. The social impact is huge, right? I just told you there are over 100 million pieces lying there, right? And they collide with each other, break into further smaller pieces. This effect goes on over the years. It's been 60 years, like it's been 62 years. 1957, the first satellite was launched. It's been 62 years, and this effect has multiplied over the period of time. Now there are millions of pieces which are lying there, which are rotating freely. No one to do anything about, right? And if we even at today, if we stop all our space missions, we don't launch even a single satellite in the orbit, and do nothing about space, these are going to multiply at such an extent by 2040 there would be no space available at the low Earth orbit to launch any new satellite. So what basically means in layman terms, basically you will be trapped on Earth. So what does that mean? If you're trapped on Earth, your idea of being a space-faring civilization, Elon Musk fans, you have this idea of being a space-faring civilization going to Mars and beyond, it's all kaput. Because you can't cross your own low Earth orbit. Right? So that's the social impact, and that's what I personally feel is the huge impact that basically if you can't move out of, there's something called a Kardashev scale on which where we lie at 0.78. There is level 1, 2 and 3. Right? Level 1 civilization, we are at 0.78. If we don't become a space-faring civilization, if we don't inhabit or colonize multiple planets, over the years, we are going to get extinct. And if you want this human civilization to move forward, you have to occupy other planets. And if because of these debris floating around in space, occupying your entire low Earth orbit, you can't go anywhere around, I mean, you're done. By the end of this century, there would be no space left. You would be trapped on Earth, and eventually you're going to die. Right?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. So there are some efforts. There is some light. It's not all dark. Apart from the background of my presentation, there is some light to this topic. There is one experiment that just occurred. This is the first experimental proof of how to counter the effect of space debris. Right? A harpoon was fired at 20 meters per second to 10 to 10 centimeter size of debris, and it captured the debris effectively. This is a project by Airbus and the Surrey Space Center at the United Kingdom. And they were the first to demonstrate that a space debris could actually be captured. Before that, it were all simulations and tests and experiments done on Earth. But this was the first proof that was given as in the lower orbit itself that a debris could be captured by a moving 20 meters per second fast moving harpoon. So that's a great achievement. It's something we have. This is the first step. So moving on to the next slide. So this is what I want to talk about. This is the most serious effort. I've been involved with this program. There is a startup called Astroscale. I'm involved with them. Astroscale is the biggest private startup dealing with the issue of the space debris. What we have done is we have designed this LCD program. ELSA stands for End of Life Service Program, and it is basically for spacecraft operators to retrieve their satellites. So what we have done is we have this demonstration in 2020 at the European Space Agency, where we have to demonstrate the effectivity and availability of this program, right? This whole satellite that we have devised. So how does it work? I'm going to give you a little bit of idea. Rest I'm under a non-disclosure agreement. So the information that I would be able to reveal is very limited, but I would give you a certain idea how this thing works. Right? It basically consists of two spacecraft. So basically consists of two spacecraft. There is a servicer, this one. This is the servicer spacecraft, and this one is the client spacecraft. The whole purpose of the client spacecraft is to serve as a debris, right? So what the servicer does is actually it has this rendezvous technology in it, right? So it chases this client system which is moving in front of it. It's so sensitive that if it changes its path even in the 1 meter of its vicinity, it could actually entrap it using the magnetic field. Right? Again, this client spacecraft, it has this docking plate so that it could get attached. What our experiment is like we'll launch this in the lower orbit. The simulation could be performed, and the servicer spacecraft would chase the client over and over again, trap it, release it again, trap it, release it again, trap it, release it again, over the period of time to demonstrate that we can actually entrap a space debris using the magnetic fields. The device that we are able to do. So now, the first test is expected to be in 2020, and the demonstration would be in front of the European Space Agency. So that's something I'm proud about. Right. So this is what my second year program looks like. We have this minor projects in our college. In second year, we have to devise something which is of value. Most of the people were testing their wing plates and airfoils and wind tunnels, me being from aerospace engineering background. I devised this. This is basically the EMPD program. This was my first idea on how to tackle the issue of space debris. What I personally felt is like EMP have this power to generate enormous amount of eddies on whichever it is thrown on. Like we have all seen Hollywood movies, right? Like in the whole power grid is shut down by just one EMP shock, right? Fast and the Furious fans, right? So what this does is like it generates a really strong EMP. This EMP generates the eddies, which causes a decrease in the momentum or a sudden loss in the momentum of a fast-moving debris. This debris then deorbits itself, enters the atmosphere, burns, and goes out of existence. So, but the issue with this was like we could trap only one debris at a time. In the ELSA program, we can do it with 3 to 4 debris. So, since there are millions of debris out there, we can't just do one debris at a time or 2 debris at a time. We need multiple options, so multiple targets at the same point. So that's where ELSA comes in. But this was my first program. So this is the EMPD program, and this was actually recognized by Lockheed Martin. We were funded 10 lakh rupees to develop this project, and this has gone international since, and we have been funded by the French Space Agency to develop it further. So before coming to the end, I would like to extend this opportunity and this challenge to you all guys sitting here. Like if I can do this, you all can, because you guys now have a platform, right? Apart from all the private colleges which are there in India, IIST, IISc, and the IITs have the platform to really do some important stuff in this work, in this field. Because there are people from my college and from some colleges in Bangalore who are already working on it. But I would really like if participation from the IITs and IIST especially would increase, and there are new prototypes or at least new ideas which come out on how to manage and mitigate the threat of space debris in the low Earth orbit itself. There are multiple startups. Again, as I spoke before, governments and the space agencies have monopoly over space technology, but in this field there is none. It's open to all, so you can actually experiment and do something about it. So, in the end, so before I end this, I want to share 3 points with you. Right, so the first point is that remember these 3 experiences. If you want to take anything from this talk, there are 3 points. First, this threat is really an immense. It's a huge threat. Just go on Google what space debris is. You'll read 2 papers and you'll come to understand how big this problem is. It's been researched and talked about in 1970s and 80s when Dr. Kessler talked about it first. But it's been 30, 35, 40 years of research and nothing has been come out. Nothing profound has come out. That we don't even have a working prototype in space, placed in space to tackle this issue. So that's a big problem. The second point is the technology is premature. So that's where the opportunity lies. Although the technology is premature, that gives you the chance to actually develop something which could be useful, which could capture multiple targets at the same point of time, deorbit them or burn them or put them in the graveyard orbit where they could be, can't damage the active satellites which are in place in these orbits. And lastly, we need you guys, right? So every innovation has come from an individual. So I expect from this platform we'll get some people who would have better ideas than me, or the people who are working in those space agencies and could actually solve this issue. Thank you, and may the force be with you.
Pass the mic around if anybody else.
Yeah, I got the immensity of this.
So take the mic. This
You mentioned that even if we don't launch any more satellites, by 2040, it will sort of map us.
yeah, the space would be here.
But suppose we launch satellites at the rate at which we are doing, or the projected rate, it will be be even early. So when will it be?
So exactly, see, I could cite you that it could be 2028 or 2030, but I don't have any authentic data on that.
But some projections have been done. Right?
No, there are no projections. The projection that I have given you 2040 is in 2011 NASA initial, where the data I have taken. There are no projections for before, but obvious fact is that if NASA is predicting it by 2040, if we launch or keep increasing the rate at which we launch the satellites, it could be before. But I don't have an exact date for you, so I'll not answer.
Something mentioned in introducing you is that some particular technology will be able to clean our orbit within a certain time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that would be at a fairly immense rate of removal of them.
Yeah.
So other technologies already.
So we, as I mentioned in my presentation, Bharat, what he mentioned was my project during the Lockheed Martin phase. That was my third year. Now I moved in fourth year, so just during 1 year of the time, this project has gone international. So me, including multiple universities and space agencies, including the French and the German space agencies, are involved in it right now.
That is the EM pulse.
That's the LSAD program.
That's the magnetic capture.
This is the program.
That's the magnetic capture.
That's magnetic capture.
That will also be 1 by 2.
Yeah, but what we're doing here is like we have multiple targets. This client satellite, it could disintegrate into 7, or it could be integrated into 1. So what it basically does is like we can capture one big target or 6 to 7 small targets at once.
So we get to those targets.
Yeah, we have to get to those targets, and that's why we have this rendezvous technology. And it's so sensitive that any target in the range of its 1 meter, even if it shifts its locus or path by by 3 to 4 degrees, we can actually shift a satellite or rotate a satellite to be closer to it so that we can attract it through magnetic.
That's true. But suppose you capture 1.
Yeah.
The next nearest will be quite far away.
Yeah.
You need to expend the fuel to.
So first of all, it runs on solar cells. So first thing is that we don't need any propellant. First thing is that, and secondly, what we have done is like this is LSAD. That's the demonstration. So what we're trying to demonstrate here through this prototype is like we can actually deorbit space debris. Right now, our aim is not to get to 10, 15, 20, although that's a problem because there are millions of out there. But first, we need to establish like we can deorbit 1 or 2 debris at a time.
So this only capture.
But it's also deorbiting. So what we do is like we capture it and then we cause a descent, right? We lift the altitude downwards, we go downwards and we release it for deorbiting. So deorbits, either it goes into the graveyard orbits, the orbits which are assigned for debris, or it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere and it burns up.
So the propulsion capabilities of the spacecraft, the chaser, includes all that, right?
So it has solar cells. It does not have any liquid or solid fuels running on it. So
No,
yeah, it does
meaning
have,
the solar base.
yes, it does. It does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So after actually beyond
Hello. Is there any some technology that now new satellites which are going up have the problem have something to solve this thing?
Yeah, good question actually. There are
Upcoming satellites.
yeah. No, actually what they have done is like from even the previous satellites they have this thing. The US has this policy like once the satellite goes defunct, you have to do it in 3 weeks. Right? Either you re-enter to the Earth's atmosphere and burn it. Either you place into one of the 4 graveyard orbits. Graveyard orbits are the place where defunct satellites or equipments or spacecrafts are actually placed. Right? Or you have to shoot it deep into the space. So all the satellites which are now built are built according to these standards. So they are destroyed once they are done. But the issue is the satellites which are already there. So it's not like like there are 10, for example, if there are 10 satellites there, it's not like after 1 year there would be 10. As I told you, the Kessler syndrome, they multiply. So the issue is not with the modern satellites. They have to follow the US standards. But the previous satellites, the number is so enormous that we need these technologies to actually manage and mitigate the debris, right? Same thing.
Can you point out how do we deorbit? We need delta.
Yeah, exactly. So what we do is like with the LCD program, what we do is like we capture it, right? Then we cause descent. That we, for example, if we are at a certain height where the effect of the gravity is low, we descend until the effect of the gravity becomes enormous enough so that when we release this, it does not have any sort of propulsion system to keep it in the orbit, right? So when we release it, it deorbits itself.
How do we perform the descent?
Like there's something called thrust vectoring, if you have heard.
How do we provide the thrust?
Like, so we have so what we do is like we have small solid propellant rockets just to provide this thrust vectoring. It's not for the propulsion; it's for thrust vectoring purpose. Like, so what we do is like we thrust vector it right in different direction until the altitude decreases to a level so that we could release it and it deorbits itself. Right? If it's very large in size, we actually try to shoot it in space. We are working on that, but currently what we have is like either we burn it in the Earth's atmosphere or we place it into the graveyard. Right?
What is the deorbit time? Deorbit time?
The orbit time is currently what we have done is between 10 to 12 seconds. So it's quite high though. We have to do it in less, but it's the first prototype, so we are working on it. So give us some time, we'll reduce that too. Right?
What is it? Graveyard?
When after you after you yeah, exactly. So after you test your merits, that's what graveyard means. After the satellites become defunct, they're actually placed into the orbits. Then those special orbits made only for return planet floating. So you actually deorbit them to those orbits. There are actually 4 of them. So very low orbit has 2, highest orbit has 1, middle orbit has 1. You place the satellites there. Yeah.
The debris. Like, how would you select the debris? Like, you have some debris which whose level be like 0 and some in terms of kilometers per second. Like that really high. So how do you select it? And which debris are you looking for? Like low Earth orbit debris or something above?
So what this is made of? So I'll break your question in 3 parts. Right. First, you ask like at which orbit you are doing this. This is made for low Earth orbit. First question. Right. Second, you are asking for the range of speed. Obviously, not all debris travel at 7.2 kilometers per second. There are debris moving very faster than that. The debris is moving much slower. So our limit currently is at 7. Right. So what we do is like we capture debris which is moving at 7 kilometers per second or below. And we deorbit them, place in the graveyard orbit, or if they are big, we'll shoot them into the space. Although we haven't developed that technology until now, but in future, that's the plan. And the third question, what was it again? Do you had any other question, or is it clear now?
We have the debris in the low Earth orbit. We are talking like 600 to 700 kilometers.
Yeah.
But the atmosphere is density for effective burnout would be somewhere around 100 to 60 kilometers. Right?
No, that data is wrong. Actually, have you seen the space shuttle disaster? The Columbia disaster, the Challenger. Kalpana Chawla died, right? So her rocket was burnt even before we could actually spot it. It was completely in flames. And I'm talking about the whole rocket and the space shuttle. These are debris of size this much or this big. It could actually be burnt out. There's no issue. The whole Challenger space shuttle burned out before it could actually have been spotted by the NASA scientists. Once it was spotted, it was actually in flames. So this could easily be destroyed. The bigger threat here is the debris which are of larger size, right? So that could be an issue, but if the debris is of smaller size, less than 10 centimeter, it could easily be done. 10 centimeters is like smaller than your scale. We can do that. We can easily burn it. But if it's larger, then that's an issue. Yes.
Like, you are being thing, is it like you are going to make the debris move in another elliptic orbit so that the smaller?
Yeah. So deorbiting is never like the Mahase, like it leaves the orbits and just goes down. Right? Deorbiting always occurs by shifting of orbits. Right? So there's one orbit. Right? So if you have to deorbit something, it moves from a higher order orbit to a lower order orbit. It moves like this. Then after that, once it goes somewhere, like for example, to electron wala case you have heard, right? It goes inside the nucleus. Once it becomes closer enough to the Earth's gravity becomes strong enough so that it doesn't need to orbit. It can move in a straight path. It just moves in a straight path and goes, right? But it's in stages. It's not like it just falls off directly. It's not like Hollywood, right? So it just has to orbit and then it comes. Right? More questions?
Another question which was she asked about new satellites. What are measures to be taken? What are measures are actually taken for the new satellites that once they are done, once they shut down?
So what we have is like we have three systems. Right. So US government has these three policies which they enacted in 2007, 2008. Right. So first is like either you can burn the debris, either you have to burn the satellite during the atmospheric re-entry. That's the first thing you can do. After the satellite becomes defunct, you have to either burn it during the atmospheric re-entry, or you could place the satellite amongst one of the 4 graveyard orbits that exist. Graveyard orbits are where the defunct satellites are placed, right? Right. One of the 4 graveyard orbits, depending upon the orbit of the satellite. It's in low Earth orbit, middle Earth orbit, high Earth orbit, geosynchronous, geostationary. We have different graveyard orbits. Lastly, if the debris is huge enough, I mean it's a large satellite, and it couldn't be burned by entering into the Earth's atmosphere, you have to shoot it into the deep space. For that, they have specific propulsion system. So what the satellite does it like it conserves its fuel. There's some specific fuel left. After the lifetime is done, it actually moves away from its orbit into the deep space itself. So you saw the George Clooney flying there, right? At the beginning of the satellite. That's what the satellite does. It just goes up. Right? So US has enacted standards for it. So you have to design a satellite following one of the 3. Otherwise, it wouldn't be allowed for launch. Right?
So the satellites which ISRO launches should be having, like the satellites that ISRO has launched.
Yeah.
They have to update those satellites.
Everyone has to do that. Everyone. Yeah. You can't build a satellite that's going to go defunct and just lie there. You have to do one of the 3 maneuvers. After the lifetime is over, you have to perform one of the 3 maneuvers.
Is it going to be identified as a new subsystem? You are getting satellite.
Yeah. Are they there?
Before we move on to the questions, I would like to call upon the stage Professor Kurian Isaac of the ISD Aerospace Department to present a memento to these people.
So I wish more students take up this issue because it's a very live and very important issue. And like, as he said, you don't have to be part of a big space program to really work on this. So any startup can, and I hope more students across the country does it. And it is really excellent to hear that somebody has made real progress. That's significant.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
If a huge space study is the satellite, it can damage its fans.
What it can damage? It's fans.
Yes, solar cells.
Yeah, it can damage. See, anything which is in space can damage anything about it, right? There's nothing sure about it. So what we do is like the solar cells there are there with magnetic reflectors, right? So what we do is like if anything approaches it, if anything comes near it, we generate a pole in it. You have heard na ki plus like they repel each other, negative repel each other, right? So what we do is generate a positive pole, for example, and we have a positive pole here. So if something is coming with a high speed, we repel it, right? That's called magnetic shielding, right? Any more questions?
Had an Indian conference regarding space sectors. So the that, like suppose I'm India, so I'm not, my satellite can't bring back a debris over US satellite. So is that issue resolved? Like they would say that you can't bring down satellite launched by US. India can't bring down satellite launched by US or China.
So that's why it's an international effort, right? So when it's like if you develop something, right? If, for example, if you have an idea, you develop it into a prototype. That's why if you're not allowed to continue it further on your own. That's why companies get involved. If for my case, Lockheed Martin got involved because it's a US enterprise. Because this whole space debris problem, if we see, it's basically United States issue. Like these are the people who launched majority of the satellites. But the thing is, like after few years, 25, 30 years, you're going to be there in space, right? You have the plans to go to Mars and beyond. But if everything becomes occupied, where are you going to go? Right?
Laws also have to be of these things.
Yeah, they are. They are. I agree. I agree. Okay,
There is a huge stop. Even if
There
somebody
is.
wants to try.
There is, but the level of thinking starts with an idea, right? So these things come afterwards. Like in चीजों के बारे में हम बोलते हैं, right? So what you do is like you start with an idea. You have an ideation phase, right? Then you work on it. Then you develop prototype. वो भी 4-5 बार. Then you ask for funding. It's like after that, there comes a point then you have a prototype ready where you care about these goals. But what I'm asking you is like at least develop an idea, right? You have something to work on, right? Any more questions?
Now that you're in an orbit,
Acha.
so you're in an orbit, you select a particular debris or you wait for a debris.
Yeah. So you shouldn't wait for it. Right? Yeah. You shouldn't wait for it. Never wait for it. Right? Because you wouldn't be able to see it or sense it. So it's coming so fast. What we do is like we do operation in batches. So for example, like just for example, SEAL Team 6 goes somewhere. He knows like कि यहाँ पे this block has this number of people in there and we have to eliminate them. That's what we do. It's like we go. We know ये lat long है. This is the location, right? And here we have this much amount of debris which is currently present there. Now we have a target like if 30, we have to eliminate 20. So we go there, we eliminate. That's what we do. We don't wait for it. If you wait for it, this is going to be a space.
So what about the debris distances? Those are large, right?
Yeah.
You need a vicinity of 1 meter. What
Yeah.
about it is more than like 10 meter, 10 meter distance?
So there, see, what you're talking about is a large debris, right? Am I right?
Any debris.
Ah.
In the vicinity of 1 meter, suppose you are able to capture. What if it is not in the vicinity of 1 meter?
1 meter, what I told is the range. I used an example of 1 meter to define the sensitivity. Right? It's very sensitive. It's sensitive up to 1 meter. Not less than that, but more than that. Right? So if it is less like 0.8, 0.9 meter, then it's an issue for us. If it's greater than 1 meter, I mean, it's no issue for us, right? It's no
Are
problem.
you sure the debris is magnetic? You are going to capture it on magnetic. You are going to capture how they are going to capture magnetic.
So what we do is like we have two things. First of all, it's proximity rendezvous. So we keep it in our side. We don't let it. Secondly, during that period of time, it's not like a cat and like mouse and cat chase. It's not like Tom and Jerry going on there, right? What we do is like we're currently already generating eddies in it, like by using magnetic field. We're generating eddies in it, so it's slowing down. It's losing its momentum. After some point of time, when it is sufficient enough, we capture it and deal.
So it is not necessary for the thing to be magnetic.
No. It's not like 8-9 का insert is होना है like al nico पे attract करेगा. It's not aluminum nickel copper. Right. More questions? At least good here. I mean, like you guys have a lot of questions. That's good.
How large is the larger buildings? How large?
I mean, like it could be large as this building too. I mean, see, there are big spacecrafts there. Right? There are there. Once their lifetime is over, what do you think happens to them? Like now we have standards. Before there were no standards. It's called launch and forget. Like chhod diya, it does its function, and once its time is over, it's over, right? So once it gets defunct, it disintegrates. Now, if you have a big spacecraft there which got defunct, it's just moving around there. Right? It's just rotating out there. people who were working in international space stations were working with some nuts, had some screwdriver, lost it, floating around. I mean, like it could range anything between a nut and bolt to a toothbrush to a whole spacecraft floating. Right, so there is no like particular, you can't classify it, it's like this. I mean, the range is so huge that I mean, it's beyond imagination to see like how big it could get. Like the largest thing you could think of is like maybe of the size of this building. Thank you.
You mentioned about that failure.
So what about the graveyard orbit itself? So do you have any mechanism instead of
So what we are doing currently, yeah, that's a good question. So what we are doing currently is like अपने घर का भी सफाई होता है. Like when you clean your own houses, you clean your house, deposit it in a garbage can. So graveyard orbit is a garbage can. You get me? Right? That's a good question. Like what to do? Like you're doing that. Once that orbit gets filled, you're going to create more graveyard orbits. So we have plans for that. But what we need to do is like कि जो हम लोगों का operational orbit है, we have an operational orbit right now where active satellites are there. We first need to clear that. Once we clear that, we can go to the graveyard orbits. That's in the plan. That's in the books, right? And that's a perfect valid question. But first, you need to deal with the active orbits, right? Ashka, the mic is.
If you like keep cleaning a lower orbit, but then like most of the new satellites that have been launched, all of them have the policy that they will be putting their satellites, become satellites in this graveyard orbit. Then if that gets filled, then again we are traveling.
Yeah. So first of all, graveyard orbit is like I understand. It's a huge space, right? So we currently not even 3%, 3.8. I think itna bhi fill nahi hua hai. It would take like next 100, 200 years to at least get like even half of it get filled. Because it's space, it's huge. It's not just room kachra fenkna hai. 10 घंटे में बनेगा. It's not like that, right? It would take a huge. My point is, it would take a huge time to fill that graveyard orbit. So what are the priorities right now? You need to decide your priorities, right? Going on a date or giving a semester exam. What is your priority? Right. So what you need to do is like you need to clear the active orbits. I'm not saying don't clear the graveyard orbits. It would get filled at some point of time and we need to take care of it. But what our function is currently you need to clear the active orbits when you have your active satellites. Because if you don't clear that, I mean, calculate Instagram band ho jayega, right? Half of the Facebook, like half of the America would be shut. Like navigating the dialogue, like half of the North America would lose its Facebook. So that's the general implication. That's what I'm trying to make you understand, like at a very basic level, how these things work. Right? Trying to relate to you. Yeah.
Sir, is it size selective? Like set some depth in there, and when it comes near, it gets to know that oh my god, it's too big. So how can we tackle such type of problems?
Oh my god, it's too big.
The device like
सुबह सुबह क्या देख के आ रहा है?
जैसे एक टैबलेट है वो जाके उसने सेंस कर लिया कि वो अगर उसका साइज डिपेंड करेगा
Yeah.
size is too big, so it's
Yeah.
selective.
Yeah, it is selective. So, for example, if you have smaller debris, right, it would re-enter the Earth atmosphere and it would burn. Right? For some debris, which are larger in size, we have graveyard orbit. If it's too huge, which as you put it, right, which are very selective, and 1 in a million chance है कि अगर वो आता है, the option for it is to launch it into the deep space. That is towards the sun, not towards Mars. Because तुमको future में मालूम you have to go there in the future, right? We'll launch it into towards sun, right? So that would be that's right. Not too huge.
What if huge surface can it takes time for the atmosphere to burn?
Yeah, that's why we don't put it in the atmosphere. Like the big debris, na, we don't get it into the atmosphere. The big debris, we shoot it in deep space. Because big debris, if we enter the atmosphere, it will not burn, it will fall on your head. Right? So we shoot it into the deep space. right?
So it can be affected by the Earth's gravity.
It can get affected. But if it's this big, right, and if it's coming down, by the end it reaches the ground, it might be like this much is left, right, metal, and it can, damage something, right? If it's very big, it will not be burnt completely by the time it enters the ground. It hits the ground, right? If it's big in size. If it's small, it will burn, right? If it's big, it'll shoot it in space. Got it?
So any nation can use that as a weapon.
Huh?
Any nation.
I think that's the big issue here. I mean, there is a paper on this. 2015, some people are actually trying to clear space debris using lasers. So what they can do is like they can break big debris into small pieces and they can actually hit targets, other satellites, use it as a weapon to hit the other satellites or other facilities of different weapons. So that was one of the problems that was asked like in this ESOP conference which I was there in Germany. They asked Star Wars हो जाएगा, and that's a real issue. But that's why governments don't trust each other on this. This is one of the factors. That's why private startups and people like you and me are being promoted, because people don't trust each other, right? So they think कि वहाँ पे laser shoot करेंगे, they'll make something into big and they'll hit the international space station. Although the probability of it is very low, but that's an issue, and there are papers on it. They say that that's a real threat. But yeah. More questions?
Regarding the International Space Station,
Yeah.
have they, I don't know if I'm asking that, eventually it becomes a definite, are there any measures to
Yeah.
get around it?
Yeah. So what International Space Station does is it was International Space Station wasn't launched and put there, right? Different components were there, and multiple spacewalks occurred to put it into place, right? To make it into one single unit. So once it's already out of date. International Space Station to extend the we have been extending it over like 10 years, 15 years. It was like it had to be retired, but we have been extending it because we don't have any other facility out there in space, right? It should have been retired up till now. But the thing is, since it has not been retired, the plan once we plan it, like now we have to retire it, it would actually disintegrate into multiple pieces, right? And depending upon its size, measures would be taken, right? Yeah. It's not gonna fall on your head. Don't worry. More questions? Like you guys have a lot of questions. That's good.
As what integration, what is the control system, architectural control system, is it active or passive?
So we use both. But I can't reveal much on it. Ask me that personally afterwards. I'll tell you what it is. But publicly. I mean, guys, I'm under a non-disclosure agreement, so you need to understand.
So how many sweeping cycles can this settle? How many sweeping cycles?
Sweeping cycles, like it depends upon the batch or the operation. For example, there are 12, 24, 36, 48. Right. So if we go for a batch of like 12, it's one sweeping cycle. 24, we have two sweeping cycles. We have batches.
All these are for small sweepings, small depth.
Yeah, I mean currently. So because it's named ELSA D, that D stands for demonstration. Right. So fingers are crossed, the खुद space debris ना बचे, because it's huge. It's very risky to go there. So let's hope man it goes well.
What is its lifetime?
What is its lifetime?
Every satellite has a lifetime.
It has a. So its lifetime is between 24 to 36 years.
So what happens after that?
What happens after that is we follow the US policy. Right. If it is like what we expect it is to last for 24 to 36 years, right? Once it gets over, once its time is over, and once the satellite has done its job, either we'll move it into the graveyard orbit, back to the Earth, or shoot it into the deep space, depending upon if we can disintegrate it or not. So that's the end of the life program. We have a whole manual on it. I'll give it to you if you want to read.
So after that, it can become a debris.
No, it will not. Because I think 2007, 2008 regulations, after that, it's been ensured. United States has ensured that any satellite which is now launched in orbit shouldn't become a space debris. So they do something, like they have something in it that prevents them from becoming space debris. More questions? Any more questions?
Bring the mic to you if you have questions.
How do you simulate this orbital debris?
Yeah, I mean, ESA has two softwares. One of them is called Drama. Yeah, it is literally called Drama. Right? So you go online and you search it. The space debris, there are two softwares, Master and Drama. Right? It sounds very.
It is Arthur C. Clarke's inspiration.
Yeah. Everything's derived from somewhere. So yeah, but it's a really good software, man. Like we can actually simulate the entire lower orbit. So I have some simulations if you want. Any more questions?
Nobody doesn't know what to bring close.
That the debris itself will be deorbited or the satellite will also deorbit? Here, the debris that you capture, that will be descended. The satellite itself will descend.
The satellite itself.
It will
It's a
capture.
risky task, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But the thing is, you can't capture it and just leave it there. What if it gains momentum?
So the
Right? It's
whole-
already traveling at a very high speed. You don't want to capture it and then release it. You don't capture fish and release it into water again.
So the whole satellite will capture some 6% debris and
Yeah.
itself will deorbit and
It will actually see deorbiting occurs in stages. So it will go up to a stage which we call a safe limit. After that, these particles would be released, which would then deorbit and go to the Earth.
the satellite itself, the satellite
No, satellite wouldn't go with them. Like
will come
up to a certain level, it would be right.
and
So that,
release it and then go up.
yeah. Any more questions? If anyone has any more questions, I'm free. That's. Thank you.